Ugh. It's cold. Where in the world are you that's cold? But enough of that. There we go. Australia? I wouldn't exactly call Australia a cold place. But hello. Welcome to this here stream. Today's usually Yakuza. However, my power went out twice. And I don't know if I'm out of the clear or if I'm out of the storm quite yet. But I wanted to get a stream in. So here we go. We're doing another video watching stream. This is one that's from The Raid Method. Bring brutal combat to your D&D table. Dynamic combat design explained by Encounter Mastering Dungeons.
Now stand aside, worthy adversary.
'Tis but a scratch.
A scratch? Your arm's off.
No, it isn't.
Well, what's that then?
I've had worse.
Mexnan, thank you for the raid with a party of 3. How's it going? We're watching some videos. Normally this would be Yakuza, but my power went out. And I don't know if my power is going to go out again, so I'm just watching videos this time.
Good morning, everybody. I am the Brewmaster, coming to you all the way from a drippy and dreary San Francisco this morning. But that's okay. That just sets the tone for what we're going to be talking about today, for the tears that your players are going to be crying when you hit them with these combat rules that I'm going to give you today. But let me just set the record.
Yes,
before we
kill.
get into it. I'm not giving you ways to kill your players, although
Some of you may die, but it's a sacrifice I am willing to make.
I'm giving you tools to make the combat feel way more lethal, much more brutal and deadly. So that's the feeling that we're going to go for. But then it'll also be way more dynamic and engaging for you and your players too. And we're going to be taking notes from one of my favorite movies of all time, The Raid: Redemption. If you haven't seen this movie, watch it, study it, and then apply it to whatever RPG
That's
that you're
Tony
playing.
Jaa
Because if
and
you're playing any game that has
someone else, right?
redemption,
The Raid is Tony Jaa. It's also is Donnie Yen in it? I don't even remember. Let me see. Or is Tony Jaa in there? I don't even know. I've heard of The Raid, but I've never seen it before. I've heard of Henki Suleiman and Yayan Ruhian. The Raid isn't Tony Jaa. It's not? What am I thinking of? Oh, I'm thinking of The Protector. No, I'm stupid.
If you haven't seen this movie, watch it, study it, and then apply it to whatever RPG that you're playing. Because if you're playing any game that has combat, where you're rolling dice against each other, if you're playing Call of Cthulhu, don't fight, just run. But if you're playing any other kind of role play game, then the rules or the methods that I give you here today could be pretty loosely applied to those games as well. Though I will be specifically referring to the 5th edition of Dungeons and Dragons in this video.
If it's brown, lay down.
In your games, does it feel like when you're rolling dice against the characters that the combat's feeling like this?
This is the finals. These boys are going at it toe to toe.
Instead of this.
I'm gonna be a grandmaster. I've seen this scene. This one right here. I hope I don't get copyright, Bob, for showing this
Let's
off.
talk about how we start achieving this level of intensity right now. So the first and primary method, and probably the simplest and most common sense solution, is to just up the damage. And I think that DMs or GMs would usually do this by increasing the amount of dice that they roll. But I feel like that's almost a roundabout method, because if you really want a monster to feel deadly, how many DMs or GMs have actually considered running your monsters with a minimum damage? If I know that these PCs are fighting a lycanthrope, and I'm just throwing numbers out here, but let's say the party's level 10 and the lycanthrope is a CR6 creature, and so numbers wise, they should really not have a difficult time killing it if they can hit it. But when you look at the amount of damage that it rolls, you look at it as like it can't even really hurt the party. But you've rolled this random encounter, and you think it's kind of cool, and you want to use it, but you toss it because it's so weak, right?
You want to watch the Raid films where you're never in the mood for them?
Run your monster with a minimum damage in mind, and you say, well, these people are going to be fighting a lycanthrope. And because it's a supernatural werewolf beast creature, if it runs up on my human fighter, even if they are level 10, and it grabs them and begins to sunder them apart, it's going to do a minimum of 50 points of damage. And then I'll roll damage dice on top of that. And that's a really quick and effective way of making each combat feel pretty lethal, because you don't want it to feel like necessarily the difficulty of the game is scaling with the characters. You want them to feel like they're meeting challenges that meet their character where they're at. And if you want a more realistic feel, having
What's up, Taryn?
monsters, especially big monsters, do immense amounts of damage, or even dealing a minimal amount on every single hit, is something that I find is especially useful for monster creatures like vampires, werewolves, things that are supposed to have immense strength, but that isn't really reflected.
I'm not sure I necessarily agree with having monsters just deal more damage. Yeah, my power was going out earlier. I don't know if it's going to stay up. So I'm doing something that won't be as devastating if it goes out again. I personally recommend the monsters know what they're doing. I like deadly combats. I like combats that are challenging. Challenging but fair, I should say. For instance, I like numbers go up, so whenever there's a discrepancy, I always roll up rather than roll down. WWE on a really hot streak with their pay-per-views. Yeah, it's a really good time for wrestling. Forbidden Door was fucking awesome. Sorry, stopping the video just because I'm responding to a message right now. He almost broke his arm. Yeah, it was bad too. The numbers go up, serotonin monkey brain, or grr. I always I want to try like a system of like crit confirms, but the confirmation does more things. So Zanwin, thank you for the 5 months. Sorry, I'm burping. Thank you for the 5 months of Prime. Hope the power stays on. These storms be wild. Yeah, there's 80,000 people in my area right now that don't have power. Any chance have I seen Alpha Boost's World of Darkness videos? I have. They're awesome. They're super good. The video essay one, the one speaker D, yeah. I took a bath and I watched that one. I remember I was like, oh, I need to hash out some time for this. Okay, all right. I just canceled Gateway tonight because one, I don't know if the storms are going to keep continuing, and two, Caitlin needs a little bit of time off, so no Gateway tonight. Sorry, I am just taking care of a lot of things right now. Ugh, I really need to start updating the Unexpectables Tumblr. Okay. Alrighty.
On the stat block that 5e gives you. And what the hell is up with unarmed combat in 5th edition? It's almost useless unless you're a monk. And even then... So in my game...
When did this video come out?
All weapon attacks.
2022?
Unarmed, armed, if it's improvised, whatever. If you're using something to strike...
The unarmed fighting style was out.
Be at least doing 1d4 damage. That's going to automatically make everything in combat feel way more deadly, because that means you can pick up a wine bottle off of the table, smash it over somebody's head, and know it's going to do at least 1d4. And when that breaks, then you have an improvised dagger in your hand that's going to be the bottle shiv that will do 1d4 damage. And if you have proficiency with improvised weapons, you may be the best barroom brawler that there ever was using my combat system, and you would be very, very effective in spaces like that. Which gets me to my next point, which is the most interesting and best thing about the Raid Redemption, and that is the constant use of the environment and fighting with objects in the environment.
Oh man. Really hope I don't get bopped for all of this most assuredly copyrighted
If you are not using the environment
clips here.
that they are using the environment in this movie, then you are really robbing your players of a
They say something in the Gentleman Bastard sequence that's really interesting. It's a philosophy on fighting and street brawls and stuff like that. It's, you don't need to be good at martial arts if you can get your environment to do the punching for you. I forget what the exact quote is. Wanna fuck up your PCs? Play Ravenloft? Yeah, it was basically saying, why would you go through the effort of beating somebody up when you can get your environment to do half the work? Because the way you win a fight is you like slam your fucking opponent into walls and shit and bounce their head off of fire hydrants and shit. Apocalypse Stone. Haven't heard that name in a long time. Second edition Dark Sun.
truly rich experience when it comes to the combat. You want to consider logically what lies outside of the four walls that is contained within this combat encounter. And I'm not talking about just the four walls. I'm talking about the floor and the ceiling too. What is above us? If a fireball goes off and ricochets against the ceiling, what is going to come pouring down into the room? If my players want to blow a hole in the floor, what is underneath this? If they want to blow a hole in any of these walls, what's on the other side of these walls. Those are the kinds of things that are going to add a dynamic feel, because even if your players don't think about it, you as the DM have, which means that when you interact with the environment, those things will naturally come into play. You'll know what's above, what's below, what's outside of the more or less. You don't have to fully
Have them fight
realize
Blue Shapiro, they'd
but
never
have
survive.
a general idea, and that's all you really need, unless you have some sort of centerpiece or a set piece plan. But if not, just have a general idea. Say that I know that they're in an underground cave, so over the top of them, let's say there's some sort of underground water reserve, and if they explode the roof, this cavern is going to start filling up with water. I just came up with that off the top of my head. And it's that easy to think of something.
I miss
And
Spoonie.
you give them those clues when that first shatter goes off and they hear the rock crack and water starts to drip down into the cavern. That automatically adds some tension to the combat where there wasn't any before. Even if they're fighting level 1 goblins, all of a sudden, holy shit, we got to be careful with the magic that we're casting. And that automatically adds some tension, because as soon as my players figure that out, even without having to think, I'm coming up with this on the spot, I'm going to automatically have my goblins start throwing something that is loud. They're going to have some sort of, flashbang or something that they throw, some sort of noise maker, and it's going to continue shaking the walls. So now my super low level goblins are posing a much, much more dangerous threat to my level 5, level 6 characters who would normally just kill them in one hit. Now they're not just fighting goblins. They're trying to stop the goblins, trying to kill them before the goblins collapse the tunnel on top of everybody. Unknowingly, because they're stupid goblins, if you want to.
So just have your enemies play smart then. Goblins aren't really all that, they're not really all that clever though, at least in popular, in Forgotten Realms. They're not like the clever ones. Kobolds are the clever ones. Goblins are sneaky.
Want to run them that way.
What's in the box?
And so then that is the outside of the walls. But then what is actually within the room? You want to think about that too. You want to think about that the most. And this you do need to plan out. What is in the room? What are on the tables? What are in the cabinets? If you're fighting in a cabin, what do the peasants have around? Do they have pots? Do they have pans? Do they have gardening tools that could be used as makeshift weapons? Do they have pitchforks laying around, or axes, or hoes? Do they have these types of tools that the players can pick up if they get disarmed? Are they cooking soup on the stove that can be tipped over?
Oh yeah, the
are
Thieves'
there
World story
soup
was
that burns
fucking
and they
crazy.
fall through it, or they have to make some sort of deck save? Are there dynamic and natural elements that you can find that are already going to be in the
Fuck
environment
Tempest
when the
Thales.
combat is happening?
All my homies hate
Know that the
Tempest
combat is
Thales.
going to be happening on top of a roof, like on a rooftop. What are some natural things that can be on a rooftop? Maybe slippery tiles. They can try to, kick the tiles out from underneath their opponent and have them slip off the roof. These are the types of things that you always need to be thinking about if you want your combat to feel deadly. You want it to feel truly dangerous, but the danger comes from the thrill of the chase, the thrill of the uncertainty. Feeling like you might slip off the roof, feeling like the cavern might collapse. And even if you're fighting a weak enemy, these extra hazards that you're throwing into the player's path are going to elevate your combat. By the same token, putting things in the environment for the player to interact with to spark their creativity is going to make every single combat feel incredibly unique and different. Like this scene. I know that a lot of DMs would have a huge problem with players trying to take a tandem turn, using their turn together to move a refrigerator to the door, using it as full cover to protect themselves from fire, and putting a grenade in it, and turning it toward the door, and blowing it up. Like, so many DMs would have a problem with that because, well, frankly, if you're running a lot of tabletop games, they're just not going to give you the rules that allow you to.
Didn't this
use
video
it as
promise a
smart
new
things
combat
on the
system?
fly. But that leads me to my very next point, and that is allow your players to be creative. And by that, I mean allow them, within reason, to do whatever they want. And when I say this, I'm only talking about in regards to the character's skills. So in my game, I allow one free skill check per turn, regardless of
No,
what
I
the
don't think
character
so.
does. They get to pick a
I
skill.
think when he said system, I think he was
how they're going to use it.
not.
Then go ahead and use that skill. I have no problem with it. Also, my combat rounds are extended to 10 seconds, so there's a little bit more time for them to act and do things like that. And I allow that certain amount of role play for them to try to do anything that makes sense for the character to try to do in that round. If that's harassing somebody, I allow it. If that's poking somebody in the eye, slide a hand check. If that's stepping on somebody's toe to try to trip them, I allow that. Because that's gonna, one, be fun, but my players also understand that the enemies get a chance to do that too. And I use this power as the Dungeon Master responsibly, and I roleplay
I agree with that.
at their level of competency. So goblins are not gonna be making a whole lot of skill checks.
I agree that you should let your players pretty much do anything,
Smart one who's running a bunch of little goblins around,
or at least
He gets
attempt
my
to
man
do
Henry,
do anything.
who's very skilled, and he starts making a lot of checks against them and start trying to trip them and feint them out and all sorts of things. And that will make the combat feel deadlier and much more dynamic as well. These are all just options too, by the way. Nothing that I say here in this video is gospel or law. These are options and tweaks that I want to give to you so that you can use them. And I have like a whole document of different homebrew rules that I can use. And I don't use all of these, and sometimes I may use one or two of these. Sometimes I may use all of these. If my players really like it and they want brutal combat, then I'll use all of these. But these are just some options for you. And so then when you combine all of these things, what you really do have is a much more dynamic and lethal situation. You have minimum damage that's being thrown around. Like if you
Yeah,
get hit,
exactly.
you're
If
gonna
a
take at least
if a
this
PC
much.
can easily do something, don't make
Even
him roll for
unarmed
it.
strikes, you know.
Zrul
And with
404,
unarmed
thank you
strikes
for
in my
the
system, I
follow.
allow even pushing, shoving, bashing, you know, somebody's head into the wall, shoving somebody into the ground, stomping on somebody. All of this is going to be doing 1d4 damage, 1d6 damage, plus your strength or your dex. And so you will be not only getting fucked up, but you will be fucking people up. And it is going to feel brutal and crunchy, but not in a slow math kind of way, but in a mosh pit kind of way. You know what I mean? And when you plant those usable props all around the environment, you want to put furniture everywhere. Tables should be moving. Chairs should be flipped over. Couches should be destroyed. Like when your PCs get done fighting in that room, some shit should have moved around. And have your NPCs interact with the environment. If your player characters are just camping on top of a carpet, have an NPC run up and snatch that bitch out from under him and have him fall prone. Have your NPCs cut the chandelier off the wall and fall on top of your PCs. Have your NPCs flipping tables over and chairs over for cover. Have your NPCs throwing bombs. Have them throwing pots of oil over at the NPCs and trying to light them on fire. Have them fully interact with the environment, because you as the DM, well, you're the coach, you're the referee. You must lead by example, and if you want your players to do this, then you have to first show them by example that these sorts of things are even possible, that your world is interactable in that way. Because unfortunately, a lot of DMs don't have interactable worlds like that. And that's a shame, truly, because it's just a missed opportunity. It doesn't mean that your game is bad or horrible or that you're a terrible DM or anything like that. It just means that the game is not going to be as dynamic as it could be. And that gets me into the very next thing, which are critical hits. Critical hits.
Here we go.
5th edition, when you roll a 20 and then you roll snake eyes on crits and you roll like a 1 and a 2, it's ridiculous. I would consider, if you want a really lethal combat or something that feels dangerous and also rewards the player while making the combat feel super dangerous, is to always have crits deal max damage. So if you do one,
I was just thinking that.
crit, then it should do at least a full 6 damage that the weapon does, and then roll another 1d6 on top of that, which is the rest of the damage that the weapon does in the follow through. By allowing a crit to do maximum damage, what you start to see is players fear combat. Even if they're at a high level and they're fighting any sort of low level enemy that has pack tactics, and they know that those people are going to be rolling with advantage when they surround them, even a level 10 party will avoid a pack of goblins at my table. And that is
Rogues at high level would be so broken. Yeah, what are they?
because they
Let's rogues would be so OP. So if you crit as a rogue, is it stormy near you? Yes, it is. It's clearing up now. I think I'm in the clear for the most part, but yeah, my power went off like 3 times. So yeah. If you crit as a rogue, if you're fighting with like a dagger, you're doing probably around like 37 damage on a crit. If you're like a mid-level rogue. So I think what he's saying here actually is you do max damage and then you roll your extra sneak attack. You would roll your extra damage for the crit. So if you're a rogue, you've already done 37 damage, but now you're rolling a d4 for your dagger damage. That's another 2, so 39. And then your sneak attack. $45. Holy shit. 51. 53. 58. 61. You've done 61 damage in one attack as a rogue. If you max out the damage on the initial hit and then roll, your rogues just become gods. My last major campaign, the party's paladin rogue nearly soloed an adult blue dragon. Yeah, there's like a combination of classes that you can be that will just fuck up anything. Highest. So I think it's something like you're an Aasimar. You're a Volo's Aasimar, I should say. Assassin rogue, grave cleric. Max dex with the sharpshooter feat and a heavy crossbow. You use your path to the grave. Channel divinity. You shoot with your heavy crossbow. And if you're hidden, you get sneak attack, and if you're an assassin, you crit if it's the first turn of combat. So it's 1d10 plus 9d6, which is doubled with the assassin feature. So it's 18d6 plus 2d10. And then with your sharpshooter, that's plus 15. And if you used your Aasimar transformation, that's another 20 damage. and then your assassin rogue doubles that damage, so it's over 200 damage. But then you factor back in Path to the Grave, and that doubles again, so that's 400 damage in one attack. Let me go to the bestiary real quick here. Let's see here. What monsters can you one-shot? You one-shot Zariel. This character theoretically has just one-shot Zariel. The creature with the highest HP is the Tarrasque. I thought Tiamat had the highest HP. Oh, no, you're right. Tiamat is 615 and the Tarrasque is 676. Anything below CR12 is Dunzo. I fought Orcus. Like, earlier this week, I fought Orcus. Orcus would die in one hit. Orcus has 405 HP. Does he have Legendary Resistance? Legendary Resistance doesn't help you here. His only saving grace would be if the crossbow isn't magical. In which case he'd basically take no damage. But if you've got magical ammunition or a magical crossbow, or both, like Dorcas, who... Yeah, you can't resist Path to the Grave. It just works. You just kill Orcus. You kill an archdemon. I'm sorry. I'm looking over the bestiary right now, and I've just seen something. I've seen something about the great worms. I tuned out for a bit. What insta kills these things? it's a combination of multi-classing and abilities. So it's a Volo's Aasimar, who's an assassin rogue, level 17 assassin rogue, level 3 grave cleric. With max dex and the sharpshooter feat, you channel Divinity Path of the Grave. Then you use your sharpshooter on your heavy crossbow. So that's 1d10 plus 9d6. 1d10 plus 9d6, which is doubled because of the assassin's surprise feature. So it's 18d6 plus 2d10 for an average of 74. You add your dex and your sharpshooter to that, which is plus 15 damage, which becomes 89 damage. And if you transformed before this, assuming you're a level 20 character, you add another 20 radiant damage on top of that. So your average damage is 109, but at level 17, your Assassin Rogue feature doubles that to 218, and because of Path to the Grave, they're vulnerable to this damage, so it doubles again to 436. But then there's things where you could be like Paladin 2, Hexblade 11, Grave Cleric 2, Assassin 3, Fighter 2 as a Bugbear. Surprise, Path to the Grave, Action Surge, Triple Smite, double damage crit sneak attack with Booming Blade. So that's 1d8 for your Rapier, plus 6d8 for your Divine Smite, if this is versus an Undead, 6d8 for Eldritch Smite, 3d8 for Booming Blade, 5d10 for Banishing Smite, 2d6 Sneak Attack, 2d6 for being a Bugbear, 1d6 for your Battlemaster Maneuver, all doubled, plus 5, Dex plus 2, doubled again for vulnerability, which would be 32d8 plus 10d10 plus 10d6 plus 7 times 2 for an average of 488. Hang on, let me see. Don't half orcs get something? Half orcs. When you score a critical hit with a melee weapon, you can roll one of the weapon's dice. You can roll one of the weapon's damage dice one additional time and add it to the extra. Okay. That's not as good as the Bugbear. Unrelated note, Smosh now owns Smosh. We only need JonTron to return to Game Grumps for the internet to be fully healed. I don't know if that's ever happening. I don't know about that one, Chief. Anyway.
They know, no, they're not gonna probably lose that combat, but they're gonna all be rolling with advantage, and if they get crit 4 or 5 times, they're gonna be in bad shape.
Wait, so the point I was trying to make was this guy saying you roll max damage for all of this. So theoretically, it would be holy Moses. So if you roll max damage on that crit, you deal 846 damage. In one swing. If you're using this guy's crit system. Like, I agree that crits should be more brutal. They should be more punishing. But having them roll max damage, you fuck up everything in the game. You kill the Tarrasque in one hit. I don't know about that one.
And that's also partially due to the next system that I'm going to talk about right now. Have a system for injuries. Injuries are...
Now this I like. I love it when fights have lasting consequences. Like, yeah, poke my eye out, cut my arm off. Give me internal damage. It's memorable and it's cool, and scars are badass.
Something that's going to make the combat feel consequential. And that's important to making the combat feel lethal and deadly, because if there are no consequences, then it's not going to feel lethal or deadly at all. And so what are the consequences? Well, you may consider having your players get injured on a crit. You may also consider them being injured if they go down in combat and then come back up. Now, in terms of applying an injury on a critical hit, like if they get, stabbed through and they take the max, because in my system they take the max damage, so they take the max damage and then they take, and then some, I may apply a bleeding effect, which is a status that I have, based on how much damage they took or the type of damage that they took or the type of attack that they took. And I've run this a couple different ways, and you as the DM may try a couple different options. A couple different ways that I've tried running this is rolling with percentile dice behind the screen. So if they get crit, then there's a certain percentage based on the monster type. So I'll say that if you're fighting a kobold and they crit, they're probably going to have a 5% chance of actually injuring the character, or like a 20% chance of actually injuring them, and then I'll roll the percentile dice. Another way that I've done this is having the character roll a Constitution saving throw after they get hit. If they roll really poorly, like below a 10 or below a 15, depending on the enemy, then they accrue an injury. And these injuries stack. And they are minor penalties, like they're supposed to be, that reflect the wear and tear that naturally occurs while the combat happens. Because there's no way that you're fighting like this without looking like this after the fight. And that
I agree with that. I agree. I think if you get crit or if you go down, there should be lasting consequences for that. I think the percentile is a good idea. I think it should be tiered as well. Like past a certain, like under a certain threshold, nothing else happens. But as you go up and up and up, your injuries can get worse and worse. Oh, here we go. Yeah. So, I love this table. The World of Farland 5e lingering injury table by damage type. So you sustain different injuries depending on which type of damage you took. So, someone in chat roll a d12. I'll take the first one I see. Someone in chat roll a d12. We're going to do a little experiment. Three. Okay, that's cold damage. Someone else roll a d20. $16. You've got minor neuralgia. You have a constant painful nerve damage over a large portion of your body. Whenever you attempt an action in combat, you must make a DC 10 Constitution saving throw. On a failed save, you lose your action. You can't take reactions until the start of your next turn. Magical healing of 6th level or higher can heal, such as heal or regenerate, cures the neuralgia, or if you spend 10 days doing nothing but resting, it resolves on its own. Oh yeah, you hear them puppers? There's more here. Let's say you get hit with You get hit with psychic damage. And I've got a d20 here somewhere. Here we go. I rolled a 7. 7 is long-term madness. Roll in the long-term madness table in the Dungeon Master's Guide. Your madness lasts twice as long. That's quite punishing. If you're running like brutal, realistic combat, I think injury tables are awesome. Have I heard of the glancing blow mechanic? If you meet the AC, you take or give half damage. I could take it or leave it. Honestly, I think that would just make combat slower.
That is what's gonna make it feel so crunchy and good when they look around and their character is fucked up. They've been crit 2 or 3 times, so they're bleeding. They're hamstrung, so their speed is reduced. They have a slight concussion because they've been punched in the head, and so their total HP may be reduced a little bit. So they're bleeding, you know, and if they move too much, it's gonna tear. They can't walk real good. Their head is fucking hurting.
You're not eager to get into another fight. So if you don't have a choice, it makes things really tense.
But they look around and they see that they've dropped 15 NPCs in unarmed combat, maybe. Or they were in armed combat, but it was all just broken bottles. And I've had some amazing and epic fights at my table using these rules. And that is exactly the feeling that you can invoke with just using even 1 or 2 of these rules, let alone all of them. Though I would just really check with your players before you start homebrewing things on the fly.
That's the most important thing he said. If your players don't like it, then don't use it. That's the most important thing.
If you haven't started the campaign yet, bring these up at the session 0. If you have started the campaign, just talk to everybody, make sure they're okay with you changing everything, because take it from me, players hate it when you start, they don't appreciate it when you start homebrewing things on the fly and just changing things. Makes everybody upset. So use everything that I give you here responsibly, and don't just go out there, you know, ruining people's days, because ultimately this isn't about making the combat more deadly, but it's not really about killing the character. You know, it's about making it feel like the character had a really tough ordeal, because that's what combat should be. And so, getting back to the injury system, it's important to remember that these injuries should linger then too. After the fight is over and they're feeling the injuries, oh man, we won, and they're looking at the bodies and they're picking over the loot, those injuries should linger until they take another long rest. Or if you're running 5e, then that's a long rest. If you're in one of my games, then it would be until they take a full rest, which is basically a 24-hour long rest at a safe location, an inn, you know, a house, a safe house that they own, a property that they own, a residence or whatever. And it's at that time that they can recover fully. I have known some DMs to run it where injuries recover over time, and not so much more simulationist style, but then that gets more into, you know, the more open world aspects. And we're not going to be covering that today. But one thing that you might do to make combat seem even more deadly is to make health potions rare. Now, I know in the DMG it says they're a common item, but if you make health potions rare, and then with the lingering injury system that I just mentioned, you make it so that health potions are one of the only magical ways outside of casting a spell that allows you to remove an injury while you're in the field, and then you cut the amount of health potions that you introduce into your game by like a half or a fourth, but you make them really potent. and that'll make the combat seem way more risky because the players will say, man, dude, we haven't found any potions in a while, and we only got 1 or 2, and if we go into this fight, even against these kobolds, and they start critting us, we might have to use these before we get to the dungeon that we're trying to go to, and they'll just try not to get into that fight because they know that it's gonna hurt. And there's no way around the fact that fighting against a contingency of anybody, even if you win, it's gonna hurt. But that about wraps up the video today. I hope you enjoyed it and that anything that I said here got some ideas rattling around in your noggin, and that you can get around to rattling around your PC's noggins with some heavy hay.
He pretty much said everything that I thought he was going to. Have crits deal more damage. Use your environment to your advantage. Have your enemies play smart. And have lingering injuries. He basically said everything that I was thinking he was going to say. And I agree. I think combat should be way deadlier. But I don't necessarily agree with some of the ways that he went about doing that. I don't like the crits automatically dealing max damage. Your rogues become basically god killers. But I agree with his points. I think different solutions, though, are what I would look for. Yeah. What is this? This is a Runesmith video.
Has your party ever stumbled into a rundown village or a roadside inn, completely ragged and soaked to the bone after a stormy week, and then slapped their buttered hams onto a welcoming mattress? Well then, my friend, this would be a perfect night to exercise your knowledge of vampires, and to teach you what a vampire's perfect midnight lunch run plan is. Normally, vampires end up getting attacked in their own castles by parties who've prepared to kill them. We've seen that, a lot. Vampires almost need to be weakened by external forces because of how cool they're meant to be, and even in stories, their deaths are caused by happenstance or planning, and not actually because the vampire's weak. Go watch, like, all of Part 2, or this thing in Adventure Time, or this show. And then you'll know what I mean. Down the road, I might even try a Wamu-style confrontation where the party attacks during the day, maybe even siding with the vampire, but for now let's set up an ambush on a bushed party. Here's the inn that your party is hoping to enjoy a long rest at. Let's make these guys really quick. Facing a challenge rating of 13. Add 1 vampire spawn, a second one, party of 3, carry the 2, save the pet dog. Let's make them level 15. I've got my randomized team, Bong Smoke the Wizard, Titty Slap the Ham-Boning Bard, and the only name I didn't actually have to change, Permo Cherry Cheeks, the Halfling Cleric. They're gonna need a cleric for this. Now for the vampire. Most of them like to set up a castle and a good stock of reliable food, but sometimes a new vampire is born and has to get that business actually started up. I think the easiest way to do this is to make our vampire an ex-thrall of another one who stole his master's blood, turning his own wife and hitting the road as quietly and quickly as possible. But now him and his little team are hungry, thirsty, so the party stops in.
So this got me thinking about one of the strongest vampires in fiction that I've ever seen. It's from a game called Veil of Darkness. The vampire Cairn. Alucard? Alucard's cheating. Alucard's cheating. So, Cairn, on top of being super strong and scary, is a sorcerer. And the way you kill him is the way you're meant to kill him is you have to avoid eye contact with him because he will hypnotize you. You have to expose him to a miniature sun. Expose him to holy water. Find his true name in the Demonomicon. Dose. Not Castlevania Alucard, Helsing Alucard. Yeah. That's the one I was referring to. And after all that, you need to keep him from going back into his coffin, so you have to nail his coffin shut. And then he'll just melt. But if you and you need to do all these things, because individually he will survive all of these. It's a game of who could do their homework better, you or the vampire. Exactly. Which vampire is this? This is Cairn from Veil of Darkness. Anyway.
Flirts with the innkeeper, and then goes to bed. This fledgling vampire shows up during his nightly travel and sees the opportunity. So let's get this thing started. They get a free round 1. Vampires have this ability that lasts for 1.
With Alucard, you have to kill him 10 billion times. You have to kill him billions of times? Who would win in a fight? Kain or Alucard? Depends on who writes the fight. Mobius? Ah, Kain! I have written this fight so that Alucard wins instead. No, Mobius. I forget what Schrodinger gave him. I think he became omnipresent. Not omnipotent. I'll go with Kain. Yeah, my money's on Kain as well. If he's got the Soul Reaver. If he doesn't have the Soul Reaver, it's a bit of a problem, but... Kain hits Alucard once with the Soul Reaver. And the Soul Reaver goes, "Ooh, yummy, a feast for me, thank you." And then sucks out billions of souls. It's just a matter of time in that instance. Alucard plus Anderson can do it. Kane would body Anderson. I don't know. I mean, honestly, I think Anderson might have a better chance at killing Kane than Alucard does. What is Anderson? Is he something like Wesker? I think he's just a normal human until he uses the nail. He's Irish. Alucard is cocky, so he would allow himself to get hit, not understanding what the Soul Reaver is, and die immediately. Yeah, I wouldn't say he still beats Kane, but I think he has a better shot at it than Alucard does. Alucard and Anderson together, they might be able to kill Kane, but that's cheating. If Alucard gets a tag team buddy, then Kane gets Raziel as well. In that case, they're double fucked. Raziel will be waiting for their souls to leave their bodies in the ethereal realm like, sup. I don't know. Anyway.
1 hour, but is much better when activated outside, so we'll do that. Bing bang boom, and oh my god, there's 15 wolves. That's not my fault, we'll keep it. Now he has to get inside. With some soft taps on the door, the innkeeper wakes up at her desk and politely makes the largest mistake of her life. She opens the door. Vampires can't enter unless invited, but they can charm people they're looking at beforehand.
Oops, I'm hypnotized.
Forcing a friendship, but not directly forcing the upcoming invitation inside. Welcome now the vampire and his wife, the thrall that I mentioned before. We're gonna abuse this charm ability and have the vampire methodically and quietly gather up people and invite them to his birthday party, making forced friendships in bedrooms like a greasy Uncle Epstein. The new friends get to wait outside. We'll do this until he fails, which he did here per my rolls, and because this is a bard. We'll let the victim act first before the vampire pulls some real tactical shit. Our heroic ham-boner titty slap is gonna drop a 5th level dissonant whisper, probably subconsciously mumbling about his wet dream just before he woke up.
Mickey Mouse comes and drains all my battery from my iPod.
That'll deal some psychic damage to me. But the vampire has crazy saves, and he gets like a 19.
Nope.
Back to our antagonist, who's right here. He goes mist mode and slips out the window to start the real attack. Noting the nasty, stinky red mist, his gorgeous wife enters the tavern to make sure nobody weak escapes. To start of round 2, the bard absolutely blasts some ham boning that wakes up the rest of our guests, and then probably waits for them because he's a bard. Outside, our vampire reverts his form and directs a chain of 15 wolves to bottleneck the hallway and really hammer in some DPS before the actual fight. Here's my initiative order so that you don't get too lost. The wizard, awake and baked, steps out to see the oncoming chain of wolves. Assuming that there's only like 5 wolves, Bong Smoke drops a 4th level magic missile, deleting 2 of them and injuring a 3rd. While the beloved wife waits at the door, our cleric is gonna fling open their own bravely, cherry cheeks freezing in the night wind. The group convenes, and understanding the gravity of the situation, Butterbum is gonna go ahead and cast Beacon of Hope. Also, the gnome steps out of his room, smelling like he maybe might have definitely shit his pants. Round 3. Hambone slaps his jaw once to inspire the cleric, and then perfectly performs the Pussy's Claire de Lune a cappella style. This 6th level sleep spell puts 6 wolves out of combat, for now. Turning it over to Dracula.
Funny poop.
He spams the fart form ability and sneaks back into the stink gnome's room to perform a pincer attack in the next round. Oh, would you look at that, there's 8 wolves. Stumbling over their sleeping and dead friends, they can't even fucking reach the party without dashing. Isn't that exciting? But hey, the vampire's first move stole like 3 spell slots. The wizard's up again, and unfortunately in front. We've got some AoE spells, but to not wake anyone up, Bong Smoke's gonna rain down some daggers, effectively putting up a wall that insta-kills anything below 11 hit points, like a wolf. Great, I'm very glad that I had them as a part of this encounter. Let's have the wife fill in, using her spider climb to look super goddamn creepy. The cleric is up, and we'll have these bright red glutes prepare a secret spell. The gnome goes back into his room and shuts the door to change his pants. Round 4. Titty Slap's ham boning resonates too hard, and he casts Blink, effectively deleting himself from the combat. Finally, it's the villain's turn, reverting his form and regaining the legendary actions I definitely didn't forget about. At this point, the gnome is just gonna quietly cry in the corner as the vampire exits his room. Oops, the cleric prepared daylight, and that's going off now that the vampire is here. My favorite.
One thing to note, though, the daylight spell does not create sunlight. It's just big light. Then why is it called that? Huh? Yeah. Daylight. 3rd level evocation. Casting time 1 action, range 60 feet. What the fuck was that? Oh. Latverian Citizen, thank you for the 100 bits. Question, as a player and a DM, what are your thoughts on the False Hydra? It's a cool concept. I think, now that everybody knows about it, though, I don't think it'll be as effective. That's the one thing about the digital age. When you've got an idea, sometimes you should just keep it to yourself. Because if you're doing the false Hydra, it's like if you haven't heard about the False Hydra, it's like, what the fuck is happening? Oh my god, what the fuck is happening? If you have heard about the False Hydra, you're just, oh, it's the false Hydra.
That's gonna be 20 DPR to both my creepers.
Oh, yeah. A 60-foot radius sphere of light spreads out from a point you choose within range. The sphere is bright light and sheds dim light for an additional 60 feet. Daylight also destroys magical darkness, which is cool, I guess. But it's not daylight. If you want a spell, if you want spells that create sunlight, your only choices are Dawn, Sunbeam, and Sunburst. Could a banishment spell be used to send the vampire to the sun? No. Banishment sends them to a harmless demiplane or to their home plane if they're not from the plane that you cast the spell on. Yeah, like the Shadowfell. Using teleport on a vampire can send them into the sun.
And disadvantage for them. This spell doesn't even fucking need concentration. In response to that, legendarily, the vampire chomps his external carotid artery, managing to slurp some juice and end the beacon of hope. The wolves are gonna go ahead and just back down and stand there and wait. At this moment, Bong Smoke's head turns lazily, and he drops the absolute fattest power word stun I've ever seen. Oh my god, the vampire cannot even legendarily resist this. It's our wife's turn, and she instantly burns for 20 radiant damage before she rushes to attack Bong Smoke.
That isn't true. For the sake of the argument, we can just say that he cast Dawn here. What level is Daylight? A 3rd level spell? Daylight is fucking worthless. Say they meant Dawn? Yeah. Dawn is different. It's like Moonbeam, but bigger, and it creates sunlight.
Smoke, taking an extra 12 damage from the blades before failing to give the pothead a hickey. Great. She ducks into this room, or whatever. Thank you, Daylight. Look, it's Cherry Cheeks, who is ruining my entire demonstration. they're gonna go ahead and find it appropriate to drop heaven itself on the vampire with an 8th level guiding bolt. I'm gonna screen cap this roll. Okay, that's not my fault, but I'm very happy. This is going on too long. I almost got lost. The gnome who changed his pants shits again.
I will say I'm glad that he I'm glad that he accounted for having disadvantage there, because if you're shooting in melee, that'd be disadvantage.
Titty Slap. He cracks open the door next to him and tells the vampire's wife about his medical problems, effectively performing an 8th level Dis Wisp. That's a fail. She's got 50 hit points. Here's another live roll. Okay. She's been here for 12 seconds and she...
How many 6s was that?
Okay, she's been actively performing an 8th level Dis Wisp. That's a fail. She's got 50 hit points. Here's another live roll.
Oh. I think I saw 1 6 and I got excited. Oh no, I saw these. I saw these as well. They look like 6s on my screen.
Roll. Okay. She's been here for 12 seconds and she has 10 hit points left. I don't want to know what he said. The vampire's turn immediately gets wasted, but he breaks free from the bong stare with a legendary resistance and also takes 20 damage. The wolves are stuck. Back to fucking... Why does the wizard have Sunbeam? Fuck the cleric. What the fuck? They both beat the save, take 15 damage, and the knives end. It's not the wizard's fault, he's high. Our good vampire friend legendarily hides in the room with the poop man from the sunlight. Our wife, who is also out of the sunlight, can't regain 10 hit points this turn, and fucking leaves through the window. Oh, look at that, our friend legendarily sucked up some poo man blood. Titty Slap returns from the other dimension and teleports into the vampire room. Wait, do bards...
Wait a minute. Did Titty Slap use Dissonant Whispers on that vampire? Was that Titty Slap? Can he do that? Can you cast spells from the ethereal plane? You can cast spells from the ethereal plane? And affect things that are in the material realm? Wait a minute. Roll a d20 at the end of each of your turns. For the duration of this spell, on the roll of 11 or higher, you vanish from the current plane of existence and appear on the ethereal plane. At the start of your next turn, when the spell ends, if you are on the ethereal plane, you return to an unoccupied space. Oh, did he reappear? Did he reappear and then cast Dissonant Whispers? Okay. Gotcha. All right. I wasn't paying attention. Gotcha. He reappeared and then cast Dissonant Whispers.
Have no attack roll spells? How did I not know this? Who cares? 4th level spell goes off, legendary resistance, because it doesn't matter, and Titty Slap vanishes again. The annoyed vampire, who has essentially dealt and taken no damage, about to lose his wife, does the same thing that I'm gonna do. He throws up his hands, says fuck these absolute weirdos, and refuses to wait 1 hour for a 3rd level spell to end. I had this whole thing planned with his coffin outside under the tree with this thrall that was waiting there the whole time, and you didn't notice, and he's right there. But nah, fuck clerics, vampires suck ass, and he escapes with... Wait a minute. He escapes with 5 potential thralls, who will be challenge rating 5 in exactly 2 days after he buries them. Actually, that's kind of really cool. Vampires are absolutely awful in so many...
Check out the Fanged King Warlock pack available now on DM's Guild. The capstone ability lets you create vampires that are under your control. Vampire spawn, I should say, not vampires. God, that would be broken as fuck. The ability is already broken as fuck, but eh.
Conventional ways, but Christ, he walked away with a major net gain and a wife who didn't even die. That was so lame, but it's really scary. That's the video.
Oh,
I took
okay.
a break there to set up, and now there's a dog's toes clacking around my house because I'm dog sitting. Thank you, Dax.
Dax. Let's check this one out.
Hello and welcome to Monster of the Week, the only show on the internet that thinks the Faustian deal gets a bad rap. Today, we are talking about one of the most interesting creatures from the Nine Hells you could ever cross paths with, the Harvester Devil. As always, we'll be going over this creature's publication history, lore, and ecology, taking a deep dive into everything there is to know. And then we're going to convert them into 5th edition D&D so you can use them in your current 5e campaign. I'm so excited to talk about this monster. They're weird, they're practical, they have a personality, and they pose larger questions about the overall cosmology of the multiverse, all of which are things I consider to be a massive benefit. So settle in, make sure you talk to your lawyer before signing any contracts, and get ready because we are taking a trip to the Nine Hells. Harvester Devils first appeared in 3rd edition D&D as part of the Fiendish Codex 2, Tyrants of the Nine Hells. This book, published in 2006, was meant to really flesh out the Nine Hells as a location for your Dungeons & Dragons adventures. As was the norm for most 3rd edition books at the time, this thing was chock full of all kinds of options for both players and DMs that were looking to get dragged to hell. There's also just a ton of really interesting game lore in this book, so if you're a lore nerd like me, chances are you probably are if you're watching this channel, and you can manage to get your hands on a copy, I highly recommend it.
This is the first video I've ever seen of yours.
We're here to talk about the Harvester Devil. Harvester Devils, or Falksugan if you're speaking Infernal, are very humanoid in their appearance. Aside from their goat feet, horns, and barbed tail, these guys tend to look like just about any other well-dressed charlatan. And that's something worth noting, is that these creatures are always dressed to the nines in beautiful garments, finery, and anything that they think makes them look cool. If it weren't for their Hellboy-esque features, they'd almost fit in with high society. So it's a good thing they can use magic to mask their true appearance. Unless this creature was encountered on its home plane in the Nine Hells somewhere, it's very unlikely anyone interacting with a Harvester Devil would have any idea that they were talking to a devilish creature. They do their utmost to come across as any other humanoid creature, at least while they're in public. In private, though, that's a whole different situation. As the name would suggest, these creatures are experts in the art of harvesting. And I'll give you one guess what they harvest. To a devil, there's no crop
Is it
more
souls?
important than souls. And the easiest way by far to collect mortal souls is simply to find creatures who are willing to give up their soul in exchange for something of value. Usually we're talking about wealth, power, or sometimes something very specifically valuable to the would-be soul seller. And the Harvester Devil is an expert at convincing mortals to make the ultimate trade. These cunning devils travel all over the material plane, hatching schemes, schmoozing with nobility, and worming their way into society in order to acquire as many mortal souls as possible. Now, due to the lawful nature of devils, this is almost never a violent transaction. The Harvester Devil will simply find individuals it can tempt into making a deal, and once a deal is struck, the creature's soul is forfeit. But the Harvester Devil does also have to uphold its side of the bargain too. This isn't a genie wish situation, this is a business transaction between two consenting parties. It's all very corporate, and if you were to view the Nine Hells as a massive bureaucratic institution, which it definitely is, these guys would be like the entry-level salespeople that get you to sign your life away and then mail you a garage full of weight loss supplements. But this is all probably sounding pretty familiar. I feel like there are countless depictions of devils and fiends all across D&D and pop culture as a whole that showcase the shadowy businessman wearing a suit trying to convince some mortal to sell their soul in exchange for monetary gain.
I'm sure your reasons are terrific if you're willing to pay with your soul.
Wait, my soul? My Kia soul?
But you guys also know that I wouldn't be making this video if that's all there was to it. See, the Harvester Devils have one exceptional quality to them, and that is the fact that no mortal can cause harm to a Harvester Devil unless the Harvester Devil attacks them first.
Can't touch me.
To put this in game terms, you literally cannot attack or take any aggressive action against a Harvester Devil unless you are either a creature from one of the outer planes or you can pass a DC 25 Wisdom saving throw. And even if you do manage to make that save, you'll be bringing a curse upon yourself that gives you disadvantage on attack rolls and saving throws for 24 hours as punishment for breaking cosmic law. This protection that the Harvester Devil enjoys isn't a result of some fiendish magic. It's only possible because of a loophole that Harvester Devils have found a way to leverage in an agreement between all of the gods, which has become known as the Pact Primeval. There's a ton of information to go over about this pact, why it is, what it is, and all of the information surrounding its creation, a lot of which is laid out in the book. But basically, it was agreement that all the gods came to at a very early stage in the multiverse's creation.
Is that a flute?
That essentially
better be a
separated the
flute.
domain of law into the domains of lawful evil and the
Because it
domains
didn't
of
look like a
lawful
flute.
good. Basically, it's why hell and heaven are two different places in the D&D canon. So, you can only imagine what this must do for their ego and their sense of security. Harvester Devils are brazen and imperious because they know that nobody can really do anything against them directly. This makes them excellent villains because if you're dealing with a Harvester Devil antagonist, you can't just go straight to the source and chop his head off. You have to get a little creative.
Now remember, the instant you finish it, I own your soul for...
Well, hey, wait. If I don't finish this last bite, you don't get my soul, do you?
Technically, no.
But before we talk about what kind of schemes a Harvester Devil might get up to using this power, let's talk about all of its abilities and what it can actually do in battle. Combat with a Harvester Devil is bound to be frustrating. This is a creature that cannot be targeted unless you're capable of passing a ludicrously high saving throw. And even then, if you do pass it, you have to make that save every single time you want to attack the devil until you can coax it into attacking you. Come to think of it, abilities like Crown of Madness and other charms that compel someone to attack a creature around them might come in real handy in a situation where you're trying to force a Harvester Devil to make the first move. But barring magical interference, as a CR6 creature, the vast majority of players going up against this thing are not going to be able to succeed on a DC 25 saving throw reliably. So because of this, the Harvester Devil's biggest fear isn't being attacked and killed, it's being captured. While you may not be able to stab it with a sword or shoot it with a gun, if you manage to imprison the devil, that's still fair game. So using a combination of spells like Disguise Self, Dispel Magic, and Misty Step, the Harvester Devil is going to be pretty slippery. And of course, it can also do the one thing most devils are known for doing, and that is summoning more devils. Once per day, the Harvester Devil can summon 2d6 Lemures or 1d4 Bearded Devils. So if things start to get hairy, they're liable to summon some lackeys and hit the bricks. But if the devil does get into a situation where it feels like it has no choice but to attack, it has one trick up its sleeve. Sorry, did I say trick? I meant dagger. It has a dagger up its sleeve that I can stab you with for 1d4 plus 3 damage.
And let me see what you have. No!
And it curses you. If you get stabbed by this infernal creature, you might not take a ton of physical damage, but you do have to make a DC 18 wisdom saving throw, or your ass is cursed. And if you are cursed, you must spend your next action attacking a target as chosen by the Harvester Devil. So while the damage from its dagger may only be a slight sting, it can use the power of its enemies to cause some real harm. But ultimately, with limited physical attack options and a fairly shallow hit point pool, the Harvester Devil doesn't want to be getting in fights if it doesn't have to. That's what it has minions for. No Harvester Devil is ever just alone. They make it their duty to become very difficult targets and very hard to catch by surprise. They go to great lengths to ensure that they are embedded in society like a tick, as deep as possible. So when you're up against a Harvester Devil, you're not really just fighting the Harvester Devil. You have no idea how many other creatures in the surrounding area might be under that devil's influence.
Become connected.
Don't threaten the guy who pours the drinks.
Maybe he's promised the local captain of the guard that he can retrieve his deceased son's soul back from the depths of hell if he cooperates. So now, you're not just dealing with the devil, you've got the town guard on your ass. Or perhaps he's convinced the majority of the local merchants guild to sell their souls to him in exchange for vast quantities of wealth, and he uses them as a network of informants. Now, while you're traveling through the city, you have eyes everywhere watching your every move. And that's not even to mention the other devils that a Harvester Devil will have working under them. So based on how long a Harvester Devil has been active in a specific area for, there's really no telling how much danger you're actually putting yourself in.
Is that
when you make
Naruto?
yourself openly averse to whatever that Harvester Devil is trying to do. If you do decide that you want to make yourself an enemy of this creature, usually it'll start with the devil approaching you and making you some kind of offer it hopes he won't be able to refuse. And once you've refused that offer, then we see how things go. But I guess that brings us to our next topic, how we might actually use these things at the game table. This monster is great because it can fit in with practically any level of an ongoing campaign. Due to the nature of this monster and everything we just talked about, it's almost never going to be a physical threat. The true challenge here is going to be outthinking and outmaneuvering such a clever creature. If you're a dungeon master running this monster, one of the key things you'll want to consider is what role is the Harvester Devil currently fulfilling within the society it's invaded. Perhaps it's the shady advisor to the king. Or perhaps it's merely a shadowy salesman that appears in his stagecoach at the local crossroads every night, promising a solution to whatever ails you. But whatever level of influence the Harvester Devil has in society, if it's at odds with the party, things are bound to get complicated very fast. The adventurers may have to dismantle this devil's network of people beholden to him, essentially just cutting off all of its resources so that the threat becomes moot. Maybe they go on a quest to find a celestial who's willing
Is that
to
a
help
Quaggoth?
them. Because remember, mortals can't attack the Harvester Devil. But if they manage to find a powerful celestial who's willing to get on their side, or maybe even a fey creature or an elemental, just some type of being that is not from the material plane that they can get on their side, now they have a way to actually kill it. Every single one of these different avenues has its own challenges. Just contacting a Celestial, let alone convincing them that this Harvester Devil is a big enough problem for them to come to the material plane and help them deal with it, is going to be a challenge in and of itself. But maybe they decide to go for a Fey creature. Just dealing with Fey in general is a challenge in and of itself. You'd have better luck convincing Jeff Bezos not to be a greedy nightmare person. I also love this as a plan B to an adventure. Like maybe the party tries to stop a Harvester Devil and they just keep hitting brick wall after brick wall and ultimately decide, screw it, we're gonna go try to find someone else to help us deal with this. The Harvester Devil goading them and laughing at them as they walk away, only for them to show up a month later with like a fucking angel who just walks in and says, heard you were talking shit. At that point, the climax of this adventure is just the party rolling in and dealing with the other devils and underlings while their new best friend comes in and just stomps this dude into the dirt. I think that would just be funny and have a lot of great opportunities for roleplay. I do also like the Harvester Devil as an option for helping the party, with heavy air quotes there. In exchange for someone's immortal soul, perhaps the party can strike a deal and get something that they really need. This could be a physical object related to this story, a powerful magic item, or something emotional, even like the resurrection of a fallen party member. Whatever the case, the Harvester Devil could make for a really interesting NPC just to interact with the party if they're desperate enough. I love the idea of a less than moral character dying in a campaign, a character who's riding the line between neutrality and evil, and maybe their soul ends up in the Nine Hells, and after they die, a Harvester Devil then suddenly appears and approaches the party.
Oh my god.
And tries to convince the Paladin or the Cleric to trade their soul in exchange for the
Harvest
resurrection
Soul
of their friend.
Devil.
See, there's this whole thing in the D&D cosmology where different souls have different values to different people. A soul that belonged to a cutthroat or a murderer ending up in the Nine Hells, that's just kind of like your average soul. It makes sense. They're supposed to be there. But a soul that belonged to a virtuous paladin or cleric or just any good aligned character really has a lot more value in the Nine Hells because it's an exceptional soul. It's not really supposed to be there, and it probably is beholden to one of the good aligned gods, so it just adds this extra value as far as the devils are concerned. So a Harvester Devil would consider it a huge win if they can convince a virtuous character to trade their soul in exchange for the soul and life of their friend who just died. Something else I think is really interesting is that Harvester Devils in the Nine Hells will sometimes act as legal counsel. If you die and your soul is under the ownership of a devil in the Nine Hells, once you arrive there, you're pretty much screwed. Unless you can convince a judge that the terms of your Faustian contract were somehow invalid. Usually you do this by convincing the judge that the devil's end of the bargain was not upheld. Maybe you were promised 1,000,000 gold and you only received 800,000 gold. Or in some cases, you can also get away with this by convincing the judge that you were forced to sign the contract under duress. This devil said, if you don't sign this, I'm gonna kill you. And that also invalidates the concept of an infernal contract. Whether it's actually true or not, if you demand a trial, you are entitled to stand before a pit fiend judge who will determine the validity of your claim. As the defendant, you can choose to have anyone you want represent you, but if you don't have legal counsel of your own present in the Nine Hells, you will be assigned a Harvester Devil to act as your attorney. This might seem like kind of a raw deal at first, because of course this random devil is going to side with all of the other devils, but something to keep in mind is that devils are lawful creatures, and they also often really hate each other. Living and working in the Nine Hells is an incredibly toxic work environment filled with backstabbing, rivalries, and basically everyone clawing their way to the top of a giant pyramid scheme. So your assigned lawyer is going to do the absolute best they can to defend you, and knowing what we know about Harvester Devils and legal loopholes, you couldn't really ask for better representation. Basically what I'm saying is if you ever wanted to play Phoenix Wright in Hell as a tabletop role-playing game, now you can. But no matter what you choose to do with this creature, in the description down below you will find a Google document which contains all the information that you need to run this creature in 5th edition D&D. And of course over on the Dungeon Dad Patreon page you'll be able to find the Patreon exclusive stat block which contains all the same information but it's laid out in a fancy schmancy PDF format. But that's not all. You may have noticed this already, but there's some unique artwork on this PDF stat block that is not present in any of the D&D books. One of my biggest gripes about making these monster stat blocks in the past has been that finding monster artwork is sometimes really challenging. A lot of it comes from sources that are low resolution, so when you put them on a big fancy stat block in high resolution, they look bad, or sometimes there just isn't monster artwork, or the monster artwork that exists is from that era of D&D where, you know, it was AD&D. It was new. Some of the old artwork is just a little rough.
What in the world is that?
And in some cases, there just isn't any artwork at all.
Is that a
But
Bulette?
thanks to the support from all you lovely patrons out there, going forward, I'm going to be having original artwork commissioned of every monster that I talk about on this show. So every new Patreon stat block is going to have brand new artwork attached to it.
They look crazy
This is so
back then.
exciting for a bunch of different reasons. It's giving me a chance to work with some really talented artists across the community, and it's just so awesome to see brand new life breathed into some of these old
Move on to the next
creatures.
video.
This week's artwork for the Harvester Devil was done by the extremely talented Tam. I'll drop a link to their Twitter page down in the description below. Definitely show them some love, guys, because they're super talented. Anyways, that aside.
Here we go.
The new 1D&D monk is out, and it is wild. This is not what anyone was expecting. Because if there's one class that most people agree needs help in D&D, it is the monk. Now, I've defended the monk in the past, but it definitely has problems. It's dealing less damage than other martial classes besides very early in the game. It requires key points to function, but it doesn't get many, especially in the early game. It's hard to multi-class with because every level not in monk lowers your key point total, and its features don't often play well with other classes. The base monk features encourage you to attack at close range, but your AC and hit points are lower than other close range warrior classes. And of course, monk subclasses are generally worse than subclasses that other classes get. So let's keep those problems in mind as we dive into this new monk to really understand how it has failed. But don't fret, there are some good things here too. In fact, there are some things that I think you should use in your games immediately. So let's dive in. Okay, so the first change you'll notice with the monk is that the martial arts die has been upgraded, kind of. Now, instead of starting in a D4 and climbing to a D10 by level 7...
Discipline points sounds stupid. I'm just gonna say it. Couldn't they call it spirit points? That's what key stands for. To anime might offend. I don't know what that means. What's wrong with key? Well, some people will say that the monk pulls a lot from Asian cultures, and some of the verbiage and terminology misrepresents the cultures that the monk pulls from. A lot of people who are a lot of at least the ones that I've met, some of the Asian people in the TTRPG sphere don't necessarily like the way the monk sort of represents their culture. At least from what I've come to know. Personally, I'm fine if they change key points to something else, but discipline? No, I don't like it. Meditation points? No. because Key Points, it was short, it was punchy, it sounded good. Focus Points? Maybe. I like that one, actually. Fist Points. Actually, before we get into this, I'm going to be right back. I want to grab some coffee. Ugh. Woke up too early. Wouldn't it have been worth it to have someone with more knowledge of key, I don't know, cultivation novels design the new monk? Well, no, the embargo was lifted. I can say I digitally attended the D&D Content Creator Summit. And I was there. Certain people who have made themselves known spoke about the monk class and how some aspects of it could be seen as problematic. And so for the future, they're making the monk a bit more of a what's the term I'm looking for here? Culturally neutral. Culturally agnostic. Pugilist? Nah, not quite. Isn't that just a pugilist? No, not quite. I'd be fine if they changed the monk name too, if that's what they wanted to do. Was this the same conference that said that half-breeds were insensitive? I think so. Yeah, it was. It was. And so they just got rid of mixed races in 1 D&D. So no more half-orcs, no more half-elves. That sounds so dumb. It is dumb. I think what they should do is have a system in place where, yes, you've removed these mixed races as part of your default race choices, but you put a system in place where you can basically create your own mixed race. You can create a half-human, half-elf. I've been wanting half-dwarves for so long. I really want there to be a system in place where you can have a mixed race that is still balanced. Basically Pathfinder 2e. I'm not sure how that works. I've only ever played Pathfinder 2e the once. Mix and match? Yeah, basically. Like, you take some features from one race and you take some features from a different race. That's another thing. They're not calling them races anymore. What are they calling them? It's something stupid. Species. Ugh. Yeah, it was something like ugly and sterile. Yeah, species sucks. Species sounds okay to you? I mean, it's just... Bloodline might be a good replacement. I actually like that a lot. Although they probably won't do it because of the word blood. Zweihander uses ancestry. Ancestry, lineage. What's another one that could be used here? Heritage. I like heritage. I like that a lot, actually. Parentage. Shadow of the Demon Lord uses ancestry. I think I like that one the best. Ancestry. Half X or half Y sounds better. I was gonna go grab some coffee. Hang on, I'll be right back. I'll do a different song. Hang on.
When we dance with destiny, I've been there and I've seen it. I'm never gonna stop believing. You'll find your flame. Oh, we can save the day. Don't try.
Whoop. There we go. All right, I've got my coffee.
17, you start at a D6 and climb to a D12. This works out mathematically as 1 average point more damage per attack you make. The downside here is that this only boosts your unarmed strikes now. It does not affect your monk weapon damage. That's because you also get the new weapon mastery feature, which is not amazing or anything, but it's a thing. So you either use simple weapons and get a boost, like being able to reduce a target's speed or maybe knock them prone, or you just use unarmed strikes. This isn't really enough to make monks as good as the other classes. 1 extra damage per attack really won't quite cut it, but I do recommend that you take this change and put it into your monk games right away. It is definitely better. Still, most D&D games finish at around level 11 or so, which means the monk is only really doing 1d6 or 1d8 damage with their unarmed strikes for 90% of the game. Only by level 11 do you get something better than a normal rapier that any other dex-based attacker would be using from level 1. But worse, there is no change to any of the other features at level 1. Monk AC is still really bad compared to other martial characters. A fighter or a barbarian can rock half plate and a shield for an effortless 19 AC. Monks have to fully invest in both dex and wisdom at level 1 to just get a 16 AC, and then
So they're even more stat reliant now. Is that what I'm reading? Because monks are what we like to call mad or multi-attribute dependent. It's the same, so they didn't change it.
then maybe it'll hit 17 at level 4, hit 18 AC by level 8. It's bad. And the monk hit die is still only a D8, which means your hit points are low because your con score is low, because you need to invest in both dexterity and wisdom to have even a tiny chance of dodging attacks. You're squishy. Basically, you are very squishy for someone who wants to be making unarmed strikes. Because here's the thing, and I've tested this theory extensively, but if you punch someone, they will try to punch you back, and that is where the monk crumbles. But hey, maybe the new form of ki, discipline points, will fix all of that, right?
I still hate that term.
Oi, give me your money!
Ah, why?
I need money to buy me some maps!
But why?
So I can run Dungeons and Dragons game.
No, I mean, why do you need money to buy maps?
Because I care about quality. I want the best maps money can
This
buy.
is an
You
ad.
get over 4,000 maps of spectacular quality from Chepeku.
Oh, you sound just like the last 12 people I killed. No way!
I'm not making any money from that.
As a bonus action, and they both cost 1 disciple point, which is in beautiful quality. Grab yours today. Movement for extra speed. So second level monks keep their unarmored movement for extra speed. Flurry of Blows still lets you unarmed strike twice as a bonus action, Patient Defense still lets you dodge as a bonus action, and they both cost 1 disciple point, which is the new name for ki. Step of the Wind gets a slight boost. You now both disengage and dash when you spend a ki point and a bonus action to use the
So
feature.
stupid.
That is pretty good, except that to keep up with the damage output of other martials, you're probably going to be still better off just using Flurry of Blows every turn in combat. You are rarely going to use that, and I really mean rarely, because the biggest problem is that monks still do not get more resources. You still only have 2 disciple points at this level, and you only get 1 more every time you level up in monk. Sure, they recharge on a short rest, but what this really means is you have 2 turns in combat where you get to be an awesome monk, and then the rest of the day until you take a short rest, you're just a terrible fighter. This is the big change that needs to happen. We need to let monks be monks. They need more ki or discipline or whatever you want to call it. Also, it's kind of weird that they're still tied to short rests, because 1D&D's been basically the death of short rests. They redesign
Do you think if they doubled the amount of key points you get, or discipline points, fucking, ugh. Do you think if they doubled the amount of points you get, like it would make for more interesting monk play? D&D Next proves they just ignore feedback. Well, I don't know. That was a long time ago. We'll have to see.
Designed the entire Warlock to get rid of the need for short rests, but monks still rely on them. Keeping the monk, and only the monk, reliant on short rests makes it even less likely that parties are going to short rest often, because who cares apart from the monk? Remember that we need to analyze these classes in the context of D&D 5.5, and that is pretty much a short rest free zone. Now, monks get a feature later on that does help with this, but for now, and for the next 5 levels, you kinda suck. And this is the big problem that we were all hoping 1D&D would solve, but they changed pretty much nothing. At 3rd level, you get a slightly upgraded deflect missiles, but it is basically the same. You can catch a ranged weapon and throw it back, dealing 2d6 at this level. They probably should have added your dexterity modifier to the damage, but hey. Everything else is the same until we reach 5th level Stunning Strikes, arguably Monk's most broken feature. Now, Stunning Strikes is only once per turn. Not one success per turn, no, only one attempt. This is bad. Stunning Strikes targets an enemy's Constitution saving throw, which is super unreliable. You can hear Colby complain about Constitution saving throws in the video we put out yesterday, talking about all the other new classes. The advantage of Stunning Strike before was, okay, enemies will probably pass this save, but I can do it 3 or even 4 times on a turn, burning through all my ki to get off that crucial stunned condition. Now it's only once, so you are very rarely going to see it. This to me feels like overly policing how a monk should play. Stunning Strikes already requires ki to attempt. They're already burning a resource, they can't do it forever. Why artificially limit them again beyond the fact that they're already spending ki just to try? Empowered Strikes at 6th level now lets you do force damage with your unarmed strikes. I really like that. But the big feature is heightened metabolism. This is it, baby. This is what we're talking about. Once per long rest, you can take a short rest in 1 minute. 1 minute is easy to do. It gets back all your disciple points, lets you roll a few hit dice, and recharges other features. It's not enough to...
Holy shit. So once per long rest, you can gain the effects of a long rest. Wait, is it a short rest? Is it a short rest or a long rest? Short. Okay. Alright. That's better. Just dip into Warlock. Honestly, because Warlocks can now go off of any mental stat. So you could be a wisdom-based Warlock who's cross-class with a monk. Very crazy potential. Right there, right there, right there.
Save monks because they still kind of suck until level 7, and around level 7 is when the key point shortage really started to ease off a little bit. Usually you would want to take a short rest between combats anyway, so this really lets you take that short rest even if there's an emergency and you don't have time for the full hour. But let's take a moment to explain why key points or discipline points really don't work as a resource in the same way sorcery points do. It comes down to the fact that monks need their key points to function in battle, whereas sorcerers can still kick ass even if they don't have any sorcery points. At level 7, you have 7 disciple points, which might be enough for your monk to do all the monk things in that one encounter. A couple of flurry of blows, a couple of stunning strikes, and a subclass feature, and then the fight's over and you have none left. Then you can short rest and go again. It really kind of works from level 7, 8 onwards. The problem is all the monk levels before that, which is where most people play the game. Getting a faster short rest is nice, but even if we gave it to the monks at level 3, it still wouldn't help them burning their key points in the first 2 rounds of combat, because you still can't take a short rest in the middle of combat. Anyway, the next few levels of the monk are mostly the same until we get to level 13, where your deflect missiles is enhanced. You can now deflect missiles of any ranged attack, not only those that deal bludgeoning.
So what if you get discipline points equal to your level, what if you got discipline points equal to your level plus your wisdom modifier? Level plus proficiency? So at level 1, you would have like 3. Level plus proficiency sounds good, actually.
Slashing or piercing damage. Honestly, I think monks should get this at level 3. My table has homebrewed it that way for years, and it's always been awesome. It's never been problematic. Remember, at level 13, a wizard can create a duplicate of themselves, or conjure a celestial, or drop a force cage. Monks can throw back 1 Eldritch Blast per round, and it costs a discipline point to do, obviously. Level 14 gives you proficiency in all saving throws. Love that feature. It's the same as the old monk. Level 15 is the old level 20 feature, giving you 4 discipline points if you ever enter combat while you have 0. By this point though, with your 1-minute short rest and your pool of 15 key points, I don't know how often this really comes up. At 18th level, you get Superior Defense, and I gotta say, it is very bold of them to call this Superior Defense when it is clearly worse than the old Empty Body feature, which I loved. That one let you turn invisible for 1 minute, so you had advantage on every attack and you couldn't trigger opportunity attacks, and also you had a resistance to every damage type except force. This one only gives you the damage resistance, and it costs 3 disciple points instead of the old one, which cost 4. Remember, wizards are casting Wish at this level. Let the monk turn invisible, come on! Finally, there is Defy Death. It's okay. If you drop to 0 hit points, you can spend some discipline points, roll 4d12, and your hit points change to the total number that you rolled. To do this often, you would need a lot of discipline points, meaning you wouldn't actually be using those points on your monk abilities, but I guess it's okay. Generally though, D&D abilities are better when they are proactive, not reactive. This feature does nothing if you're never dropped to 0, so if that doesn't happen often, it might as well not exist. Okay.
That's a good point. And what's the inspiration for this kind of ability to defy death? Long Death Monk? Yeah, but this is like base monk. If that were like a Long Death Monk capstone ability, that would be pretty interesting, actually, but This is the Monk Capstone ability, right? Or it's the level 18 ability. I think the level 18 is the Capstone, actually, because you get like a... For 1 D&D... Yeah, this is the class Capstone, but the level Capstone you get like an epic feat or something. Not in this version of the playtest. Not gonna lie, I started doing playtests for 1 D&D, and then I dropped off after the whole LGL situation. I just couldn't find the heart to keep up the playtesting.
Okay, so I think we've explained why this monk simply does not do enough. If this was the final monk, I would consider it a failure. But look, sometimes you can have a lackluster class like the Ranger, but it's made pretty decent by some awesome sub...
Whoa, whoa, whoa. Hold the fuck up. Ranger was only crap in 5th edition. I just finished a campaign with a Ranger. This is the one I beat Orcus with. My Ranger was badass. Here was my... Whoa! Fuck, my coffee. Here was my setup for my Ranger. I had a Strength Ranger. I could probably actually bring up his character sheet right now. Yeah, here we go. I had a Strength Ranger. A Furbolg Ranger. He was level 15 by the time the campaign ended. He had a 20 Strength, 13 Dexterity, 10 Constitution, 12 Intelligence, 18 Wisdom, and 8 Charisma. A Stranger. There's a stranger there upon him with a big hand. And his thing was that he threw axes. He threw hand axes. And he had the thrown weapon fighting style, which gives him a +2 to his damage for thrown attacks. And did you get a hand axe that returned to your hand? Yeah, I got a Belt of Returning, and I also later levels got a legendary hand axe that automatically returned to me. It was called the Slipstream. And because it was a Furbolg, I innately had a bunch of features that the Ranger had already. So what I did was I took some of the Tasha's optional class stuff, and it was awesome. I was also a Swarmkeeper Ranger. Swarmkeeper is an awesome subclass. What was my swarm? Hummingbirds. And at certain points, his swarm changed to will-o-wisps. They literally have beaks meant to kill other hummingbirds. Yeah, but have you seen one snore? It is very cute.
Classes. So let's take a look at those. Shadow Warrior Monk. This is the darkness themed monk. From level 3, you can use 1 discipline point, that's 1/3 of your total at this level, to cast the darkness spell, and you can see through it when you cast it. Also, at the start.
That's just Shadow Sorcerer. That's just the Shadow Sorcerer ability. It's now Shadow Monk. But it's just that's just the Shadow Sorcerer ability.
Start of your turn, you can move that area of darkness to another place you can see within 60 feet. This is decent. The downside of darkness is it also impairs your allies as well as your enemies, but you can see through it, and hopefully because you're going to be cloaked by the darkness, you won't be getting hit too often and dropping concentration. At 6th level, you can teleport from an area of dim light or darkness to another area of dim light or darkness. Then you get advantage on the next melee attack you make this turn, which sounds really good, but considering the fact you're going to be cloaked by darkness hopefully most of the time anyway, that advantage might be a bit redundant. At 11th level, the teleport gets better. You can now spend 1 disciple point to teleport even if you're not cloaked by dim light or darkness, and when you teleport to a location, you can immediately make 1 unarmed strike. I really like it. By level 11, you have plenty of discipline points, and you use your first turn's action to set up the darkness, bonus action teleport into it, and attack an enemy immediately at advantage. Finally, at level 17, you can use 3 discipline points to turn invisible while you're in dim light or darkness. You can move through creatures and objects as though they were difficult terrain, and using your flurry of blows no longer requires you to spend a discipline point. I think this one's pretty meh, to be honest, because you're going to be effectively invisible in the darkness you conjure anyway. Moving through creatures is fine, and reducing the cost of flurry of blows doesn't really matter at level 17 because you've got so many discipline points. Then we get the 4 Elements Monk, which was, until now, probably the worst monk subclass in the game. The big 3rd level feature is you can use...
Some people would argue it's the worst subclass, period, in all of 5e. That is before they changed, or after they changed Beastmaster Ranger.
One discipline point at the start of your turn, no action required apparently, to surround yourself with elemental energy for 10 minutes, giving you some benefits. Your unarmed strikes can deal elemental damage, your reach is 10 feet greater than normal, that's really good, and anytime you hit a creature with an elemental unarmed strike, you can force them to make a strength save or move them 10 feet towards or away from you. This movement isn't once per turn, and if you're a DM and you're thinking having to make potentially 4 strength saves every single turn sounds like a pain, you're right. This is a really powerful, cool feature that is going to make turns extremely slow. I love it because you can lift a creature 10 feet in the air with this, then they'll fall to earth, land prone, take an extra d6 damage. Honestly, it might actually be a bit busted, and that is what monks need. We need subclasses to be a little bit unfair for the monks if their base class is going to be this weak. I just think that the constant rolling of strength saves on every single attack you make...
I think I can agree with that. I think if your base class is just Punchman, then having subclasses that really almost overshadow the base class is a good concept.
is going to be a bit too much housekeeping. The rest is okay. Level 6 you get an AoE for 2 discipline points, and at level 11 you can fly or swim for 10 minutes as a bonus action and a discipline point. Genie Warlocks can fly from level 7 without any discipline points, but you know, whatever. Finally, at level 17, you resist 1 elemental damage type that you can change at the start of each turn, you deal 1d12 extra damage each turn, and you get Destructive Stride. This is basically a Shardland Stride the spell, letting you dash past a bunch of enemies and deal damage as you move past them. If released as is, this would probably be the best monk subclass. It's also a long way from Avatar: The Last Airbender, which is what I think most people are looking for when they pick the 4 elements monk, but if that is what you want, don't worry, I'm actually working on an element bender class right now that does all the awesome Avatar things. This is a good subclass, and stay tuned for an actual Avatar class coming soon. Finally, we have the Open Hand monk. From 3rd level, when you hit a creature with your flurry of blows, you can force
This
them
is
to
like
make
your
a
default
saving throw. If they fail a con save, they
Kill
can't
Bill.
take reactions. If they fail a strength save, they get pushed 15 feet away. If they fail a dex save, they fall prone. The prone one is probably the best because most enemies likely have worse dexterity than they do strength or constitution. At 6th level, you get Wholeness of Body to heal yourself. The old version required an action to cast, and it healed for 3 times your monk level, so it scaled really nicely. The new version costs 1 bonus action and gets you back 1 roll of your martial arts dice. I don't know which is better, they're both pretty mid. And we can't afford mid. We need the monk subclasses to be straight fire, or the base subclass needs to be made more powerful. At 11th level, you can use your Step of the Wind without using any disciple points. Unfortunately, your 3rd level feature works with Flurry of Blows.
Are they turning Open Hand into just the champion fighter of monks? Because this just seems like better monk.
So that's the one you're going to be wanting to use every turn in combat, which makes this kind of pointless, I guess. Still, it does give you a movement speed of 120 feet a turn outside of combat, which is pretty fun. Finally, we get Quivering Palm, the iconic badass final feature. And it's sadly quite a lot worse now. Before, if a creature failed a saving throw against your Quivering Palm, they died. They fell
Kengan Ashura mentioned.
straight to 0 hit points. If they succeeded the save, they still took 10d10 necrotic damage. Now it just deals 10d12 plus your monk level damage, or half as much on a successful.
Does 10d12 plus your monk level? Eight, 9, 14, 17, 23, 34, 36, 39, 40. That was cocked. 50. Plus 17 would be 67. So when you hit a creature, you spend 3 discipline points to start these imperceptible vibrations, which last for a number of days equal to your monk level. Vibrations are harmless unless you use your action to end them. To do so, you and the target must be on the same plane of existence. When you use this action, the target must make a Constitution saving throw, taking 10d12 plus your monk level of force damage on a failed save, or half as much damage on a successful one. So after did the old Quivering Palm have to force a saving throw as well? Yeah, but in that one you just die. Your heart just stops. You either die or it's 10d10. Yeah, I don't see the need why they I don't see why they needed to I don't see why they needed to do this. Did Quivering Palm, did it specify take a full 10d10 necrotic damage? Did the old Quivering Palm specify that it only worked on creatures that weren't constructs or undead? Because the thing with the Quivering Palm is that your heart explodes, right? People are looking it up. You think it worked on constructs and undead?
Save. It's okay damage, but it's definitely worse. Again, wizards are casting Wish, bards are shape-changing into adult gold dragons. Let the monk do the death punch. The one D&D monk just isn't enough. I like the new Shadow and 4 Elements monk. I like some of the open hand monk. I like the faster short rests. The improved martial arts damage dice are fine, but without the discipline points to back up the key features, this is still a weak class. It's got low AC, low hit points, and barely any room for feats or multi-class. This feels like a missed opportunity to me. I think Monk was the one class that people were really down to say, yeah, tear it apart, go wild, see what you can come up with, but they didn't really change all that much. Of course, if you want to see my fixes for the Monk, I did an entire update to the class in the DM's Secret Weapon. I did the entire Barbarian and the Champion Fighter as well, issues 15, 16, and 17. You can grab any individual issues from my website, dndshorts.com, or join on Patreon to get the newest issue every month and the last 3 issues completely for free. Remember to like and subscribe, check out other videos on the channel, and yeah, I'll see you next time.
Gosh, I don't know. What is this, I wonder?
Hello everybody, how's everybody doing? Ready for another fun-filled romp through D&D YouTube? I thought this week... Wait. Let's not do anything we will regret later. Let me get through the intro and...
See you later, Kaiju.
I'm Antonio D'Amico and this is Tip of the Hat. The show where I take an aspect of the game, something that people have trouble with, or an oversimplification of a concept that has devolved and lost all meaning it originally had, and talk about it to hopefully help you when running and playing the game. Okay, so what's with, you know, this? Well, we gotta define some terms first, because that's the crux of the argument, especially the word railroading. So, what is railroading? Well, railroading used to mean any instance where the DM ignores the player's choice and agency in order to make sure that whatever the DM wants to happen in the game happens. Do you want to go back to town to warn the villagers of the upcoming zombie army instead of going directly to the Necromancer's tower? Well, the Necromancer has A force field. Yes, a force field. You see, and the force field is all around the town, and you can't go. No. You can't shout until the villagers hear you, so you can warn them from outside the force field, because it's soundproof. Yep, completely. What? You want to write what the problem is on a piece of paper so they can read it from the other side of the force field? No, you can't. Well, you can, but it won't work because everybody's blind. Yep, it's a blinding field of force field. Yep. So do you guys want to go to the Necromancer Tower now? What do you mean you want to dig under the force field? What the f? You get it. Railroading literally comes from being on rails, unable to choose your direction or pace, and passively following the strict tracks your DM has set out for you.
If I go through that door, the plot continues. The story of me through the door. If I stay here, the plot can't move forward. The story ends.
Losing what makes D&D interactive completely beyond, I don't know, choosing your actions during combat. But even then, railroading is an abuse of the DM's power, a breach of the social contract at the table, a violation of the player's right to their character's agency, and just all around a pretty bad thing to do. Top 10 D&D crimes that will land you in prison in at least 73 countries for sure. So, why am I here defending it? Well, trick question. I'm not. Or I am. Because railroading, like any part of internet discourse, has devolved into losing all its meaning. Railroading used to only mean taking away players' agency to force the story to go in a specific direction, but more and more I see it conflated with something that has literally absolutely nothing to do with it. Linear storytelling. And that's what I'm here to defend. New word! Who is this linear storytelling fellow, and why am I here defending him? And why does he look so appealing? Could the rumors be true? Could I be a linear storytelling enjoyer? Well, let's see what linear storytelling means before I respond to the allegations. But, just kidding, there's no sponsor this week. Instead, I want to show you what I had my human familiar do for me last weekend. Hit it. Come with me to hide gifts around my city. Now. So I got a box full of RPG stuff in it for free RPG day, and I have decided that I'm going to hide these around my city to promote people visiting our local game store. This wasn't sponsored, by the way. Free RPG day is a non-profit. Nobody's paying me. I don't even get to keep these. I just do this out of a sense of whimsy.
I've always wanted to try the Avatar.
So I got some construction paper and I
RPG.
handwrote an explanation about what was going on to attach to the items. Once everything was ready, I set out into the city to terrorize those that live in it. I live here, by the way. I hid these cool transparent red dyes along the train tracks, but then I thought for 5 seconds and a half longer and changed the location to around the plants of this park. I then entrusted this fish with this dice bag because it seemed trustworthy enough. I then made my way over to this oversized bird bath we have for our plaza here and left a dice tray. Let's hope the water level doesn't rise. Just kidding, it never does. Then I picked this outdoor playground next to the port so that the orcs that have been sinking ships might find this full game with cards and everything. And then for my last trick, I went to the auditorium and left the last dice tray here to brighten the mood of whatever tourists found it so they would spend.
This is a fun idea, but how many people are going to pick those up, not read the card, and just throw them away thinking that it's trash? Like, I like this idea. It's very sweet. It's very unique, but I just hope that nobody just, like, no janitors or anything just picked them up and threw them away. I'm pretty sure that's illegal here. Is it littering? Is it unlawful advertising? Is it both? I guess you gotta know your community. I would put them in spots that are, like, not hidden, but are... I would just put them around town in places. It's definitely littering. Yeah. I wouldn't, like, hide them. I would just put them, like, if there's, like, a billboard, I'll put, like, a thumbtack to it and attach the thing to the billboard. Tape it on posts or whatever. Is that vandalism? It could be vandalism. But yeah, I hope none of this stuff got, like, destroyed or thrown away. or anything like that. That would make me sad.
More money. At this point, I have been walking for a couple of hours, so I made a point to drink some water, get some electrolytes in, and hydrate. Now properly hydrated, I took the box with the rest of the stuff and gracefully set it down on the counter of my local game store. Perdona. And it was another great day of saving RPGs and not saving a single bee. That's right. Like I said in the Feywild video, your boy is doing TikToks now. And also YouTube Shorts, but who's counting? I have an extremely hard time actually promoting anything I do, but y'all have been nothing but kind, so if that was fun to watch, there's more of that on TikTok. I just posted a brand new one over there.
Was that Amy Schumer?
Saving RPGs and not saving a single bee. That's right. Like I said in the Feywild video, your boy is doing TikToks now. And also YouTube Shorts, but who's counting? I have an extremely hard time.
I'm glad you're in pain.
Actually promoting anything I do, but y'all have been nothing but kind, so if that was fun to watch, there's more of that on TikTok. I just posted a brand new one over there. It's only there, so if y'all could go check it out and follow me over there, that would mean a lot. That would mean a ton. Link in the description and all that.
Melissa McCarthy? Oh no, I have no idea who that is.
Okay, enough with the TikTok, back to linear storytelling.
I'm no longer glad that
as
she's in
opposed to
pain.
Railroading is a word that extends beyond the TTRPG sphere. You can often see it popping up in discussion about narrative in video games, along with other stuff like ludonarrative dissonance or flow, or any other word that pretentious people that feel self-conscious about choosing video games as their focus for media studies, me, like to use when talking about games. Linear storytelling is defined simply as a story that proceeds.
Amy Schumer is not the funny woman. Amy Schumer pretends to be a funny woman. When she is in fact not funny. She's also a plagiarist. She steals her jokes.
Well, in a linear fashion. X happens, then the players do Y, which then means that they can go to Z. These events are connected by a straight line of causation. Linear storytelling is often opposed to sandbox storytelling, which is... what's the word I'm looking for? Oh, wrong. The opposite of linear storytelling is, very surprisingly, non-linear storytelling. Non-linear storytelling has pre-planned events, but these events have no set order and there's no causation between them. The players can make Y happen, then go to do X, and then end in Z, but there's no path of causation between these events. The path between them is not aligned. The difference between this and a true sandbox is that in a true sandbox, you make your own fun. There's no X, Y, or Z. There are no predetermined events. The players just decide what they want to do and the DM makes it up as they go. And the closest thing the game has to a narrative is created as the game goes forward. It's a literal sandbox. The DM has just created a basic framing, the world, and the players can take that framing and make of it whatever they want. Like
it's not vandalism, but you do need a permit.
There's no through line because the players are basically
Makes
making
sense.
the story themselves. Both linear and non-linear storytelling have planned events, sandboxes don't. The difference between linear and non-linear is how these events are connected. Okay, let's give it a second. Okay, that should be good enough. See, the fun thing about game design is that nobody agrees on what terms mean, so I just thought it'd be nice for me to leave some time for people to tell me my definitions are wrong, and I think that's enough time. Moving on. So why are people poo-pooing all over linear games? Well, for absolutely no good reason. The point some people make when you tell them that linear narratives have nothing to do with railroading is that linear narratives somehow create railroading through magic by existing, or are more conducive to it. And that's... oh god, what's the word? Yeah, I think it's once again wrong. Here's, I think, the misconception that has led to tons of people thinking that linear storytelling is somehow associated with railroading more heavily. Linear storytelling can feature massive player-driven choices and still be linear. If in your game you have to choose to ally yourself with the Southern Underwater Basket Weavers or the Cat Whalers of the Northern Wastes, and you choose to ally yourself with the Basket Weavers, and who wouldn't, honestly, and that leads to a massive shift in the story, that still can be linear storytelling. You can still have big choices made by players in a game, it just means that the DM has to think of several outcomes for those choices. And once that choice is made, prep accordingly. Not prep more, just prep accordingly. Prep until the next big choice or until you feel comfortable. But that can very much happen in a linear game. I just did a very linear adventure in this channel for my Feywild video, and that features a big choice. It is just at the end, but if you go to the end of the adventure, you will see that the plot hooks account for the different possibilities. Since we're talking so much about video games, let's give an example of exactly this. Mass Effect, or its better cousin that somehow less people have played because we live in an unjust and cruel world, Dragon Age, are both ostensibly linear games, for the most part, that make player choice and branching paths the literal main feature of the game. You are given choices, you choose.
None of us has a choice.
And then those choices have consequences later on in the timeline of events. That's linearity. There's a clear line of causation between those. Conversely, let's take Breath of the Wild, one of my favorite games of all time, which for most of its runtime is non-linear, and then goes right back to being linear, but who's counting? You can go to any divine beast at any time in any order. Those predetermined events have no line of causation between them. They are entirely separate. You create a timeline by simply playing, but they are designed in a non-linear fashion. And the game gets progressively harder depending not on which divine beast you have done first, but rather how many have you done. That's non-linearity. Now, I love Breath of the Wild, but if you're gonna argue with me that Breath of the Wild has more player choice in its narrative, not in its gameplay, in its narrative, than Dragon Age, I don't know, we can't be friends because I'm not friends with people that are wrong. In conclusion, for this part of the video, saying that linear games are bad because railroading is like saying you don't like cherries because you're lactose intolerant. Conflating the two is creating a very weird atmosphere where people automatically feel like they won't like a linear game, which is wrong. Maybe that person would love it if the well wasn't poisoned with a wrong association with railroading. But also, it's getting alarmingly close to linear games are not D&D because D&D is about player choice, which is just plain wrong.
We all make choices, but that was a choice.
Playing a non-linear game is not somehow more D&D, and it certainly isn't better D&D. So after all of that, I'm ready to say, yes, the rumors are indeed true. I am a linear narrative game enjoyer. And I'm gonna tell you exactly why I think that linear games are just as good, keyword just as good, not better, not worse, as sandbox or non-linear games. So just like I said a minute ago, linear games can feature as many high-impact narrative choices as non-linear games. But I'm gonna argue that, at least to me as a DM, it's much easier to craft much more important, high-stake choices in linear games. Because I know the order of events. I might not know all of the events, but I know their order. If I know that after the players choose to save the mystical baby boy of power, they'll have to do X, Y, and Z before the baby boy's mom reveals that he's destined to become the Antichrist, I can drop hints, I can start building to that reveal, and the choice is either sacrificing the baby to prevent, you know, demon apocalypse, or try to find a way to save him even though this might cost the party a lot. That choice can feel even more impactful.
What kind of baby diaper should the Lord of Darkness wear?
As Dungeon Masters, we have very few things that are actually under our control, or we should have few things under our control. You know, if you're doing it right and not railroading, which is still bad, we can't control pacing, we can only influence it, we can't control players' choices, we can't control what characters the players make, unless you're one of those very fun people that limit what people can play down to like 3 classes and 2 subclasses. Giving away control over the order of events too makes it so that, at least for me, crafting an engaging story ends up being even harder. If you've had a hard time making big plot points hit emotionally with your players, I don't know, consider giving linear storytelling a chance. Second point for linear storytelling is that, well, we as people are much more familiar with it, and I think it's a much easier entry into DMing than non-linear or sandbox storytelling. It depends a lot on what your table wants out of the game, but if you want an epic story that feels like you're playing through your favorite video game or reading through your favorite book, except here you can actually make choices that impact the story and create your own character, I think that linear storytelling is just plainly much better suited for that. Some people want the complete complete freedom of literally doing whatever. Or they like the idea of individual arcs, Monster of the Week sort of vibe of playing small stories that are not particularly connected. And that's perfectly valid and a great way to play D&D. And linear storytelling when it comes to those would probably not be as good as non-linear or sandbox would. But I do believe that epic stories with a traditional plot structure that we find in most games and most movies and most books are better served by a linear structure. And since we're more familiar with a linear structure, that means a baby DM might feel more comfortable with it starting out. Third point is that sometimes a lot of choices are worse. Not really. I mean, yes, but no. Let me explain. This is about what your table wants. Some people, me, my players, many other people online, if you would believe, feel like absolutely no overarching plot makes a game feel empty and meandering and aimless, and they don't like that. Too many choices can create choice paralysis, which you might have experienced yourself. Have you ever given a charcuterie board of choices to your party, excited for them to compliment you on how many choices you've prepared, only for them to stare at the choices and just generally sit there in silence? I know, it's painful. I've been there. The reason behind that, more often than not, is called choice paralysis. There are simply too many choices.
Too many notes, Your Majesty. Exactly. Very well put. Too many notes.
And choosing between them is scary to players. That's valid. And while linear storytelling can create choice paralysis, I believe it's less likely to do so. While linear storytelling often has narrative choices, ally yourself with A or B, betray X or take the fall for them, trust Y or Z, etc., it has less moment-to-moment choices, such as, do we go to the mountains or to the desert? Do we go left or right? Do we go to this town or the other? You know, because the next event has been clearly hinted at you. But conversely, some people feel like a linear structure is too restrictive, and they miss those moment-to-moment choices. Some people do not want their DM to create events, regardless of how many choices they get to make, and would rather be the ones dictating what happens next. That's sandbox. But not everybody prefers that. Finally, and this is less of a point in defense of linear narratives and more just something to keep in mind, you can have these in the same game. Yes, exactly. ¿Por qué no los dos? There are plenty of games that feature sections that are linear and sections that are non-linear and sections that are sandbox. Critical Role certainly springs to mind, particularly Campaign 2. You don't have to marry your type of narrative. This very much can be a narrative open relationship. You freak. Maybe the party arrives at the Feywild and you decide to give Sandbox a chance. And based on those events, when they come back, you switch to a linear structure as the party deals with the repercussions of what happened in the Feywild. And then you switch to a non-linear narrative as they have to collect, I don't know, the 4 elemental sippy cups of doom to beat the bad guy. See? Easy. Well, not necessarily easy, but it can be done. So, in conclusion for real this time, railroading is indeed bad, except if by railroading you mean linear narrative, in which case, no. That's not bad actually. That's just as good as any other narrative style. Some people will gravitate to one or another, and it's in the group's best interest to be crystal clear on the narrative style the game will be mainly following, so as to not have situations where people feel some type of way about it. Man, don't you hate when D&D arguments end with, talk to your group, there's no wrong side? So anticlimactic when there's no bloodshed. Anyway, I guess that means that you're free to go out there, pick a narrative style that suits both you and your group, and put your deep-seated traumas into a goblin that you will get to embody 4 hours a week if you're lucky. And yep, that's pretty much it. I legit don't have a good to give you at the end of this. It happened, finally. This was just a topic that I really wanted to talk about, and I couldn't think of something to add at the end of this video. But I hope that what I had to say was good enough for you. I think it's important to be able to do videos like this from time to time, especially in Tip of the Hat, where it's about advice rather than exploring D&D content, so I hope you like this. This certainly was more theoretical, game designy than most of my stuff. I love linear narratives. I remember when the trend started to shift in video games and we started to see a lot of linear narratives bad, open world non-linear sandbox good, and I hate that. I hate that somehow linear narrative means bad, and it makes me really sad to see the same trend popping up in my favorite hobby. So I hope I succeeded in defending my position, but I'm sure you will let me know in the comments. Speaking of which, thank you so much for commenting, thank you for liking, thank you for subscribing. I believe that's all 3. If you have done none of those, please consider. My usual content has free stuff at the end and everything. It's a good deal. Trade offer. I give you video and free thing. You give me love. Again, happy.
I mean, I've said it before, the railroading is a tool. You use it like any other. As long as you don't abuse it, it's fine. I don't necessarily enjoy the correlation from video games to TTRPGs. Because I feel like, while yes, there is some overlap, they're also fundamentally different experiences. Like when people say, Connor, you don't like turn-based RPGs, but you like Dungeons and Dragons? Yeah. It's because they're fundamentally different experiences. Sometimes a group of players need a direction. And that's fine. I don't know. But what I do know is that I've been streaming for about 3 hours now. Like I said, there's no gateway tonight, so unfortunately, I'm gonna go take a nap. Then I'm gonna finish the Hydromancer's spellbook. I might publish it tomorrow. Speaking of player choices in games, have you ever considered playing Wrath of the Righteous? I've never heard of such a thing. Pathfinder Wrath of the Righteous. What is this? Oh, Pathfinder. Oh, it's a video game. Embark on a journey to a realm overrun by demons and a new epic RPG for the creators of the critically acclaimed Pathfinder Kingmaker. Explore the nature of good and evil and learn the true cost of power. Rise as a mythic hero capable of deeds beyond mortal expectations. Yeah. Interesting. Is there character creation in this? It's Baldur's Gate, but Pathfinder. Yeah, that's the vibe I was getting from it. I'm also excited for Baldur's Gate to come out. It's Baldur's Gate comes out August. Extensive character creation. Ho ho ho. It's 70% off right now. Oh, right. The summer sale started today. Oh, no. Heh. Gotham Knights. Whoa. XCOM 2 is like $6 right now. Ah. The entire XCOM collection is $19. Yeah, what if I just... I just bought $200 worth of video games for $19. Right. Not what I'm actually opening this shit for. Wrath. Pathfinder Wrath of the Righteous. Enhanced Edition. Yeah, I'll add this to my little cart. For your security. We need to verify that your PayPal account is what you say it is. Does it come with the expansion? I think so. Pathfinder, Wrath of the Righteous. The Last Sarkorians. Well, either way. Either way. Whoa, shut the fuck up. Either way. I'm gonna go have a snooze. I may or may not be back on later. Who knows? Because I've got nothing going on for the next couple of, for the next little bit here. But, yeah. I'll talk to y'all later. Where should I send you all? I wonder. Who is streaming? Oh my god, Midnight is streaming. We gotta raid him. What should our raid message be? He just ended? Ah, phooey. Ah, phooey. Ah, phooey. Ah, phooey. Well, you know who didn't just end? You know who didn't just end? Is Xanalis Grimm. And our raid message will be, monks still suck. Frowny face. There we go. That'll be our raid message. Monks still suck. Alright, take care, everybody.